Hello, my havoc wreakers. This is Lauren, creator of 2000 and Late and voice of both Harper and Havoc. Thank you so much for joining me on this bizarre, demon-filled journey. Making this show has been such a cathartic joy, and I hope it's equally as fun to listen to. But my God, it can be a lot to swim in the toxic waters of our present moment. So, to leave you with a bit of hope each week instead of only havoc, every Friday we'll be dropping these little bonus chats. In the course of working on this podcast, I talked with some incredible artists, creators, and activists who are similarly grappling with our twisted reality. Those conversations have been fascinating and far-reaching, and I want to share the curiosity and optimism they instilled in me with you. The main show will continue to come out on Mondays, and over the next 7 Fridays, you'll hear these chats about everything from TikTok to suing the government to unions to sex ed theater troupes. Then, on Halloween, our final Friday, we'll be dropping the finale of Season 1 of 2000 and Late. But first, this week, to start us off, I hopped on the mic with my dear pal Klaudia Amenabar to have a bit of a meta conversation about fandom and activism. Part of the aim of these bonus episodes is to inspire you, the listener, to take your love of a good story and pour that energy into making the real world around you a better place, which is something that Klaudia has a lot of experience in. But as we talk about, Klaudia and I have known each other for a long time, so this conversation wanders into fandom more generally. All the folks I spoke to were so interesting, so each of these conversations has their little side quests. All right, without further ado, here is my conversation with Klaudia. So, Klaudia, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we really met like a long time, like 10 years, which is kind of crazy.
Oh my God.
And we really met through a fiction podcast fandom, I think, right?
Yeah.
That is really how we first got connected. And I think, you are one of the few people who is a friend colleague who I feel like understands fandom in the way that I understand fandom.
Yeah.
And you've also been on Tumblr for a million years in the way that I have. And I know that this is a huge question, but if you were going to briefly kind of summarize what fandom means to you and why you feel the fandom is important, how would you do that for somebody who maybe is not familiar with fandom culture or Tumblr culture?
Well, I feel like fandom is a really broad term, and I feel like the definition of it has changed actually in a lot of ways. I work with market research and stuff, so a lot of times we're thinking about these kinds of questions, right? And how do we define that? And I feel like fandom is a set of behaviors, and it can apply to anything, as we've seen on Tumblr. It can apply to talking about F1, or it could talk about Doctor Who, or
F1
or
was
anime.
the first thing I thought of. I've been seeing so much F1 stuff on Tumblr recently.
Yeah, but it's a set of behaviors, and that's why people will bring up things like, a lot of the behaviors that we see now with fandom, we saw with religion in centuries past and things like that. It's a set of behaviors and a way that you interact with media and a way that you interact with, I don't like using the word content, but interact with media. And so, and there's different kinds, right? There's transformative versus curatorial fandom. And, there's the Tumblr.com girlies fandom, sure, but that's only one small sliver of things. And I feel like it's a set of behaviors, and that's why it can encompass so many things, right? And one of my colleagues, I'm going to have to look up a Slack message because she thought of something really interesting of what is it? Oh, the difference between a fan base and fandom. Because we were talking about making, and a fan base is that could encompass anything, right? That could encompass just somebody who says, I like this thing. But fandom usually refers to people who do a certain set of behaviors. And that could be, I buy merchandise, I write fan fiction, I watch edits, I make edits, whatever. It could be a lot of those things. And they're different levels of engagement. And it does, for me, it definitely, at least in the past, has referred to a community element. Obviously, that part is changing a lot too.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a really broad term.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say is sort of I'm sure it's different depending on the media in question, but what is the set of behaviors that define your fandom specifically for things?
at least for me, when I like, if I'm thinking about like me, like my personal behavior, or if I'm thinking about like what's that difference between fan base versus fandom, it's like, are you actively participating with other people? So that means you're reading fan fiction, you're looking at or seeking out or drawing fan art or edits. You are engaging in arguments or discussions about the thing online, even just going to post about the thing online in the hopes that other people talk about it with you, or you're joining communities to talk about that thing, or you're going to events, obviously, to talk about that thing, or cosplay, anything that is creating something, either trying to engage with others or creating something. And I always say this too, of that, like, people nowadays think you have to post something in order for it to be fandom, because there's plenty of people who just write fan fiction and draw things for themselves, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to post it for other people.
100%. Yeah.
So it can be an act of engaging with others in fandom or of creation. I feel like it can be both of those two things. It's almost, I almost feel like you've gone from fan base to fandom when it is going beyond just saying, I like this thing, I consume this thing. Like, if you basically, maybe it's going beyond just consuming the thing. I feel like then you go into fandom, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Like, I consider myself being in the fan base of like lots of different bands and you know, musical artists, but like, and while I was very much actively in bandom in high school, like, that's not really how I engage with that anymore. You know, it's like, I listen to the music, I share the music, but it's very different from like, the like fanfic writing and reading that I do for other fandoms or like other things that I'm a fan of, usually like a TV show or a book series or whatever else. And I really resonate with the community aspect of it. And that's really what I want to get into today with you, because you are now using the power of fandom community to do activism.
Yes.
And so I'd love for you to just tell me about Project Fulcrum, what it is, how it sort of came to be, and what it's trying to do.
Yeah. So I've worked with some Star Wars fandom activism stuff before, and I have a friend, Alana, who is a Brooklyn organizer, who brought me onto this project because basically she was connected with a up-and-coming civil rights organization called Get Free, that's mainly working with young millennials, Gen Z, hopefully older Gen Alpha, kind of the younger demographic, of mobilizing people. And they have a mandate of both repair for the like wrongs in this country that this country has done, and also moving forward. I don't work for Get Free, so I don't like represent them or anything, but like we've talked about their stuff a lot, and but we were connected with them, and they were kind of like, okay, we need people who are in these fandom communities, because fandom is, I mentioned it a little earlier, but it's kind of replaced things like, not fully replaced, obviously, but replace things like, the church or something in your day-to-day life. If you look at past organizing groups, they went to where people are and where people congregated around the things that they like, the things that they valued. If that was religion, if that was, your local park, that kind of thing. And obviously those things are still there. But now that we have online communities, now that we congregate around more than just, we congregate around our interests in a similar way, we've created community around that. And communities have always been, of all kinds, have always been a center of organizing. You start by unionizing your workplace. You start by organizing a church. You start, by doing mutual aid out of a church. You start by these sorts of things. So it comes from that idea. And obviously there's just like recruiting people from fandoms is easy. And people have done it before, right? The big example is Fandom Forward, who we got to be a partner on the project, which was nice, who kind of popularized this idea with the Harry Potter fandom. And the campaign I worked with back in the day, SW Rep Matters, was more about representation in media and less about like mobilizing fans in a different way. But it's been done before. Alana talked about one that was Black Panther fans, where they went in when people were in line for like to go see the second one, and then they registered people to vote and like stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, like stuff like that. So like it's basically just using fandom as a nexus point in the same way that we've used other types of community as a nexus point. And also it's like, this is a big thing in online communities nowadays, that like people not only use it as a point of community, but they use it as a point of identity. It's also an easy way to recruit people who are like-minded or who are ready to do something but maybe don't already know. And that was a big part of Project Fulcrum. Was there's a lot of Star Wars fans, and I noticed this personally because of my former podcast, RuPaul's Pod Race, which we have sunset. But then when me and one of my other co-hosts started a supernatural podcast that I'll talk about later.
Yep.
Yeah. But one thing we did on that podcast a lot was like, we would be joking around about the latest Star Wars thing, but then we would talk about, we would get into really like talks about political theory, representation of anti-fascist politics in Star Wars, all this kind of stuff. And people were really interested in that. Yeah. And then when Andor came out, it was like kind of twofold. And so when they brought me onto the project, I help them kind of structure and do the strategy of it, of like, okay, this is where the Star Wars fandom is at now. This is where the leftist Star Wars fans are at right now. What they need is kind of a bridge of education of, here's what happened in the show. Here's the parallels that you're seeing. You know, let's give you some history, some theory to kind of back up like where they got that in the show, make those connections, and then bring them into the movement in different ways. So what we did with that was we started with newsletters, where we started Nemec's Weekly Manifesto, which was also really cool because I think a couple weeks ago, the actor who played Nemec was at a pro-Palestinian protest, and we were all like, oh, nice.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. And it was incredible. But so basically we started with that, and it was just, you know, and I was like, okay, let's get some, you know, fan artists to make like recruitment. I love Cheriel. She's wonderful. She's made concept art for the High Republic, whatever. She made like a recruitment poster that would be like an in-universe recruitment poster. And, you know, let's recruit people. And first they sign up for the newsletter. And then the newsletter, it was a labor of love because Disney decided to release 3 episodes at a time of Andor.
Yeah.
Which when I heard that, I was like, no. So every week we'd have to watch 3 episodes and then turn it around to release a newsletter
Good
each
Lord.
week, which was a lot. And to be able to talk about what was topically in those episodes and in that arc. And there was a lot. It was, and then also, so it's like, okay, we're going to have a couple things about what happened, how does that relate to real life, either in the past or in the present, and then here are some things that you can do right now, either the things that local get free pods are doing, or things that our partners want us to do. Like we worked with Fight for the Future and Fandom Forward. One of partner Fandom Forward, Nalini's Substack, World Builders Club reposted one of our newsletters, and we had people like go on different Star Wars podcasters, like podcasts, and work with influencers to kind of be like, the biggest influencer was Mesa Windu, who during the Hollywood strikes, he pivoted his entire content strategy from talking about just Star Wars to talking about politics and labor unions and this kind of bridge between here's this thing that you like and here's where that came from in real life U.S. history. And he's been able to continue that in a very positive way. And I used him as an example, and then he made videos about it and that kind of thing. So we were able to like, how do we integrate into the fandom week to week conversation is the first step. And the second step was, and it worked really well because it got a lot of people into their Discord. Like they really wanted to grow their Discord. Yeah. And so then the Discord became, okay, how do we keep this going? And so it became, let's train volunteer moderators. Let's have, you know, a Rogue One watch party, a Clone Wars watch party. Let's have discussions. What fandoms should we engage with next? Right now, they're doing one with Beyonce and Cowboy Carter, but I also recommended to them, like, you guys should work with One Piece fans next, that kind of thing. So it's very much a thing of like, it went from education to recruitment. And then it was like, okay, then we had like a Discord channel that was called like Fulcrum Transmissions, where it was like, if they had like a rapid response action that was like, everybody needs to send a letter to this specific representative and click this link that we're already sending out on, you know, Get Free Socials, whatever. But then we have this Discord full of people who just signed up because they're watching Andor every week. And, you know, everybody has that role in Discord, that they're a Fulcrum, and they're immediately being deployed and that sort of thing. So it was kind of like using that week-to-week discussion to like morph it into actual action in that way.
Yeah.
And it was actually very positive. Like we didn't have too many like weird trolls. Like we were trying to be careful about who was invited. Like you would sign up for the email list and then you would get an email saying, "Hi, you can also join the Discord." So it was only people who were like really down to clown kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like those steps, and it was also trying to get people to join in so that the people at Get Free who are professional organizers can then train some of those people. Because then what ended up happening, and what I'm sure you've seen on Tumblr and stuff like that, is you get a lot of young people who are like, I want to do something, but I don't know where to start. I don't know who to be connected with. And then these people who are professionals, they were just like getting on a Discord call or a Zoom call and being like, I'm going to train you on what to say if you go to your local, like, town hall meeting and stuff like that. Like those kinds of trainings, or, here's your pod that you can join, or this is a pod at this university. They have a lot of ones at universities, kind of thing. And like, I went to a training in New York City about like going to a specific hearing. They have a reparations committee that Get Free helped get started, that, we did a training on like how you can, what you should say and how to testify and that kind of thing at those kind of hearings and stuff like that. So
cool.
Long story short, is a big recruitment tactic and a big recruitment tactic in these communities. And obviously the media itself can be a testing ground for people who are already open to this kind of stuff. They just kind of need to be deployed.
But obviously, like all fandoms have a spectrum of beliefs and of behaviors and of types of people. And I mean, like, Star Wars fandom, yes, but just like more broadly, how do you view... I guess let me step back and maybe abstract this question a little bit. Something I think about all the time is The Boys, a show that I really enjoy, sort of against all odds. Like, I think that there's like a lot of things about The Boys that like don't totally scream like Lauren is gonna love this, but like I really do. Like I think that it's great. I think that the performances are amazing. I think the writing is great. I think like the satire that it's doing is like really sharp. And during the second season, there was sort of this like hubbub in the fandom because Homelander, spoilers for season 2 of The Boys, it's in like season 4 now, so whatever. Homelander, who's like the sort of evil Captain America of the Boys universe, gets into a relationship with a Nazi, and there was a large portion of the fandom that was very angry about this, and it sort of revealed this section of the fandom that thought Homelander was the hero, and it's like, what show have you been watching?
Oh my God.
And it was, did you hear about this when it happened?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I figured you'd be familiar. And I guess I have like a couple of questions in this. Yeah. I think like and I was talking to somebody kind of about this the other day too, around like just political art and like putting politics into your art and sort of, wanting to, like, always thinking about the responsibility you have as an artist to always make sure that your art is engaging with people with like kindness and empathy and, like good faith and all of this kind of stuff. But also understanding and letting go of the fact that like some people are just going to like willfully or just subconsciously interpret your art in a completely opposite direction that you can't control.
Yeah.
And I think of that Boys example a lot because it's like, oh wow, like this is a show that appeals to a certain segment of the population that isn't necessarily watching like, I don't know what's like a good like leftist show.
I mean Andor, but
Andor. Well, right, but I think Andor kind of fits the same mold as The Boys, right? Which is that it's like it's talking to this audience that like isn't necessarily engaging with like leftist art more broadly. Yeah. But then in the case of The Boys, like you had people just like totally misunderstanding the message that the show was saying. And so my question is twofold, which is like, what do you do when like you're trying to communicate something and there's just a willful misunderstanding? Or like, how do you think about bringing those people into the fold through the art that you all love collectively, right? And like maybe not something as extreme as the boys and the people who think that Homelander's a hero, but like people who maybe aren't making the connections between like the thing that they love and the real world. For those people, like, do you think it's worthwhile to reach out to them? Do you think about how to bring them into the fold? Because I think that, you know, there have been lots of discussions in this new administration of like, there, you know, like there are certain people that cannot be pulled back from their ledge, but like maybe there are certain people that like we do need to like coalition build across many different types of people. So like, how do we do that effectively? Does that make sense? That's a big question.
Yes,
but like, does that all make sense?
I think, and I think this is why people often go and try and do this with big fandoms like Star Wars, because there's a lot of people in the middle. And I think one thing that a lot of people brought up when we were talking to people for Project Fulcrum, but just in general with Star Wars fandom lately, there's a lot of like the same discourses over and over again fighting with these fandom menace people, and people get tired. They're like, well, real people are dying and I'd like to talk about real shit, or talk about, you know, actual nuanced conversation about things I did or didn't like about The Last Jedi, and not, oh, wow, you're mad there's a woman kind of thing. And people are tired of having those conversations over and over, and that's why we reached out a hand to people and said, what if we had a different conversation about how this connects in real life? And the biggest thing, and this may come with age, this may come with age for me, but I got a lot better than I used to be about, you know, block and mute of people like that. Not just like, you know, the girlies that I'm fighting about the minutiae of shipping, but also just like the assholes, the racist and sexist and homophobic assholes. And this might just be a me thing, but I have found that all they are going to do is yell. All they're going to do is yell and complain and bitch every time something comes out. And the only thing you can do is yell louder. Don't yell at them. It won't do anything.
Right. Just block them and yell louder.
Don't engage. You know, there will always be the Star Wars theories of the fandom. How do you yell louder? And one tactic, obviously, that we used with this was that, like, you know, take control of the narrative, which is a part of actually the story in Andor, but of like take control of the narrative by, if the conversation about Andor week to week isn't just about the lore and the Star Wars of it all, and is about the politics, and we're integrating ourselves into the fandom discussions with the influencers who are leading those discussions, who are already a little left leaning, but who have a really big audience, that helps with that just yell louder kind of thing. Just drown them out, because all they are is they're just engagement farmers. And so it's like, so just be better at it than them. That's literally like, if that was any advice I could give to, I don't know, the Democratic Party, the Zoran Mamdani thing of like, just be better at it than them, is honestly what will work. And that will naturally bring in those people who are in the middle of the road, or whose minds may be able to be changed. You know, if the content is compelling, if the discussions are interesting, if it's people that they already follow, if it's integrated into the discussion, you will get a lot more people than the constantly fighting back against whatever. That's not to say we shouldn't call someone out when they do some shit, but there does become a threshold. There does become a threshold of, well, this person's an ass, just fucking block them. You know, we have to be on the offensive instead of the defensive of, we're actually steering the boat of the narrative of this fandom. And whether that's, you know, what is the overarching conversation? You know, how do we steer the overarching conversation so that it's not just the nitpicking of lore and why is there a woman here and why is there a black person here and why is there a gay person here, and more of, you know, how do we yell louder? That's my answer to that.
I think that is such a good point. And I think you identifying the people sort of yelling on the other side as engagement farmers is such a good point that we don't talk about enough when it comes to this stuff, because like even just taking two recent, like, not even like controversies, but like things that sort of, fed into like the right wing nonsense machine of like the Sydney Sweeney thing and then the Cracker Barrel thing that's been happening in the last week.
Yeah.
Both of those were essentially like purposefully manufactured by these X accounts that exist to farm engagement, and it's the Pop Craves and all of those spin-offs of all the Pop Crave accounts, and wokeness and all of this kind of stuff, and it's like they are making money off of views on X because of the way that X now works.
Yeah.
And it's not, and like that's what's so bizarre to me, and I think what's so important to remember is that like the sort of outrage cycle that people are engaging in and the people are yelling about was usually started by somebody who like truly doesn't have a belief system beyond capitalism.
Yeah.
And like they don't actually care if Sydney Sweeney's a Republican or if like, they don't necessarily believe in the great replacement theory. They just want money and they just want eyeballs. And it's like, and obviously like, I'm sure that there is plenty of overlap between those people and people who also believe despicable things. But like, I don't know. I do think that that's like an important thing that we don't talk about enough on the left. And like, yeah, to your point, like the Democrats could really learn a lesson about like how to engage their base in a way that's like actually effective.
And I got this idea and I this became a large part of my philosophy because of one of my earliest jobs out of college. I've been through the digital media ringer, and one of my earliest jobs out of college was working at Upworthy, where we basically made progressive clickbait. Yeah. And this was before Cambridge Analytica, and we back in the day, I can't speak for Upworthy now, but back in the day, like we had a really robust, very progressive, like copy and standards team that made everything, and we use like data and numbers to basically get someone to click and then get radicalized through whatever they're reading. And it's far more effective to do something like that than to constantly be fighting whatever these assholes are saying. And I'm like, y'all, you need to learn engagement farm, and whether that's engagement farming about politics or engagement farming about, like, I mean, I do it now when I talk about anime and stuff, and people are like, is this peak or is this whatever? I'm like, I don't really give a fuck. I'm going to talk about the thing that I like. Will I use something as an SEO trick to get you to watch it? Absolutely.
Totally.
But it's far, and people are like, oh, like, how do you don't really engage with the fights or that kind of thing. I'm like, I just know the strategies of how the platforms work and how to get people to comment and click, and obviously walking the line of like, not being malicious about it, but I'm like, you gotta have people who are good at that. And even within a fandom, which can be hard, because do I still fall into some of the fights? There are still times where I go quote tweet and then I go, let me delete that. They're trying to bait me.
The number of times that I reblog something on Tumblr, type out a whole rant in the tags, and then just go delete. And it's like, and I wrote out my rant in the tags, but I didn't actually post it. And it's like, I'm sort of cleansed of those thoughts, but like nobody else sees them. Right.
Yeah.
And like, I think in part, like, yeah, you and I have this is not our first rodeo. We've been around the block when it comes to fandom, when it comes to being on these platforms, whether it's Tumblr, whether it's Reddit, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Blue Sky. TikTok, I will admit, I don't understand. But like all of the others, I feel like I understand. And I think that, like we've both learned that you just have to like block and ignore and curate. You're responsible for curating your own experience in a fandom and on the internet, right? And like for me personally, like my like public facing Tumblr, like the laurentrump.tumblr.com, like occasionally I'll engage in conversations about like labor, right? Like with the WJ and SAG strikes, or about like the industry more largely, or like I don't really engage with politics hugely, but like just because I don't engage with politics online at all for a variety of reasons. And this is all leading to a question that I'm really curious about. On my like actual Tumblr, where I like actually do like my like anonymous fandom activities, I have every possible politics tag blocked. Because like even if the people that I follow want to post about politics, I simply do not want to see it, because that's not what I'm going to Tumblr for, right? I'm going to Tumblr to see like gift sets of the pit, it's like I'm not there to see politics, like real world politics. And like, that's not to say that I'm disengaged, right? Like another reason I don't post.
You've curated it on different platforms.
I've curated on different platforms, and I've like determined for myself the ways in which I want to engage in activism in my real, concrete, in-person life. And I do those things, and I don't talk about them. And it's like, for me, like that's like the comfortable level. And so my question to you is like, what do you say to people who like? Because I think sometimes like the sort of fandom community is, amidst the ship wars and the, all of the rest, can also get into like a little bit of like fandom policing, right? And like the right way to engage with the fandom. And so like, what do you say to the people who are like, I don't want politics to come into my One Piece, I don't want politics to come into my, like whatever else. Like I want to engage with the politics of the show, but I don't want to think about the real world because this is my escapist place. And I'm just curious to like your personal perspective on sort of like fandom as escapism, fandom as activism. Do those things live side by side? Are they both important? Is like what's your own personal view on all of that?
I think that activism has to be more than just posting online. And listen, I've done a lot of posting in my life, so this is a very hypocritical thing of me to say. But I think obviously you have to engage in both, and you have to taking a look at what do you do in fandom, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, if you're going to engage in activism within a fandom, what are you doing and to what purpose? Are you organizing fans to do X, Y, or Z? Are you organizing fans to raise money to do a banner to renew a TV show, which is like, girl, what are you doing? Or are you like, I've seen a lot of like, there were a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen fans that did this. There were a lot of anime fans that did this, whatever, who would do like zines and stuff to raise money for Gaza and like stuff like that. Are you doing something like that? Or is it using fandom for organizing, or is it using fandom as organizing? Is the question. Because I mean, listen, I'm guilty of it as well, where there have been times where I've seen certain things and I've been like, that's a little odd. I have very different views on things now than I did before. But I think if your activism stops at calling people out for shit in fandom, now I should let me put a big asterisk on that by saying, if we are talking about things like calling out like racism in fandoms, I think that is that's a different ball game than what I'm talking about, because that is literally a literal wrong that is being committed. It's not like representation or whatever. That's a literal wrong that is being committed. And we are talking about that because we talk about representation in media, we can also talk about representation in fan media. And that is very important to talk about. And
absolutely.
I think, and that can be your form of activism, like the people who were talking about getting racism out of AO3 and stuff like that. Yeah, that is doing activism within your community, within your fandom.
It's the same thing as like calling out your family member at the dinner table if they say something bigoted, right? It's like it's talking to your community about something that is not acceptable.
Yes, it's more of like, I am an activist because I'm an anti kind of shit. That's a more of the shit where I'm like, so that's not in the sense that, well, no. And I mean, the biggest question I would tell people to ask themselves is, how is this affecting people in real life? If that is, I want to make sure that this fandom space, whether this is a Discord or whatever, is safe for my friends who are people of color, and I'm making rules and I'm, whatever, that makes sense. If it's these people that ship this thing that I disagree with I don't like them, and I don't like what they post, and I think that it makes things bad, then you have to go, well, how does that affect people in real life? There's a long, nuanced conversation to be had about that.
Absolutely.
But as an organizer, Kim, there's people dying. I say that, and again, big asterisk. I say that as somebody who, that quote from Justin McElroy, you are safe from the government, but not the Justin.
From the Justin, me. Yeah. Totally.
I wish we could live in an environment where I could call you out for, why is it that I look up a certain fandom, for instance, and like 90% of what I look at is incest. And I'm like, I support you guys being freaks. I just don't always want to see it.
Right. And just tag your shit, please.
Yeah, and I will block and I will mute and I will whatever, but why is there so much of it? Maybe we need to have a conversation about this. Unfortunately, we can't have that nuanced conversation because then they'll just take that as a way to, censor all of us, so we can't have any of that nuance. So, mind you, I'm coming from the perspective of I've seen some shit and I have said stuff very publicly about it, and the girls don't like me when I say it. But
you know what the main conversation that needs to be had is. Like, I think we saw this, not to wander too far from like the main discussion, but I think I don't know if you saw the like Kinktober meltdown.
Well, yes. I'm in the Arcane fandom. Well, yes, I did.
So, like, I didn't even know what fandom it was for until I did some, like, deep dive. I saw, like, the video on Tumblr of the meltdown before it happened. To briefly describe, too.
There was a meltdown about Kinktober every year.
Every year. And to briefly describe to the people who are listening to this who don't know what we're talking about, Kinktober is fandoms will often engage in sort of, like, thematic and timed like community activities, right? Yeah. So it's like you do like Inktober for like artists, right? Where it's like every day you like do a different drawing sort of based on like a sort of, a 31 point card that you kind of pick off the internet and you post it and you sort of engage with other people doing Inktober. Kinktober is like fanfic writers doing the same kind of thing. Like it's kind of like doing like a like a bingo card or whatever. And some of the organizers for a Kinktober for the Arcane fandom sort of got into a bit of an internet drama because they put some very, very strict rules on what you were allowed to do. And I do think that like there's like a very interesting discussion to be had around like depictions of sex in art and of like, harmful depictions versus things that are like exploring harmful things in real life, but in fiction, in a fictionalized way. It's like that's a discussion that we're just like simply never going to handle as humanity. Yeah. But like the kind of to your point of like, I don't want to see the incest. Why are you guys so obsessed with this? Like maybe there's a conversation to be had. But the bigger conversation is that like, and this is sort of what came out of this whole Kinktober drama, is that like there are very many active government efforts to censor people on the internet, specifically around sex. And it starts with porn and it goes to LGBTQ people, and then it goes to women. And it's just like, the censorship just grows and grows and grows until we're living The Handmaid's Tale. And I think that like that's like the bigger target, right? Is like we can't start policing every single weird fetish thing somebody does on AO3, because then we are doing what Project 2026 is or Project 2025 or whatever is. I forgot that we are currently living in it for a second. What they're trying to do, which is eventually ban all queer media from the internet and from public life,
and also ban any type of political speech, right? Because people are like, I won't get to be able to do my smut, and I'm like, and you guys think you'll be able to get accurate information about Palestine either?
It begins with this.
It's very, and that's it. That's why I think having your own little enclaves, whether that's your group chat with your friends or a Discord or that kind of thing, where you have rules and establish, this is why we always say we miss the days of forums and stuff, but like where you have rules of engagement and things and everything isn't out on a public forum makes that a little easier. But I think, overall, I think that the big thing is like, okay, am I doing something that helps people in real life, or am I doing something that is just about the fucking discourse. And sometimes that takes age and experience to be able to figure out. I'm patient zero of that. There's many a story I could tell. But it's I think, if you're using it as a way also to connect with people in real life and connect with like what people are doing in real life, I think that also can make it valuable. And I know that's hard, especially for younger people who feel like they don't have any connection, younger queer people don't have anybody in real life, whatever. And then they get funneled into the discourse machine. So like, I get it.
But
yeah.
I think it really does come down to like curating your own experience. And like it's like I do like have my fandoms where it's like I don't want to engage at all with like the larger fandom discourse. I don't want to engage with like real life implications of the media or whatever. Like I truly just want it to be escapist, right? And then there's other fandoms where it's like I do want, like Andor is a perfect example, right? It's like I do want to engage with real world politics because that show is I think articulating so many wonderful ideas really well. And
I think it speaks back to that thing of curating your own experience, right? So it's like, okay, let's say you engage with, I don't know, like you said, The Pit, right? You engage with Pit as escapism, but that show deals with a lot of real world shit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you see a lot of people talking about, the politics of something or whatever. The response to that then is either just muting certain people or muting certain terms or just, keep on scrolling. I love keep on scrolling. It's a thing I had to teach myself even of okay, this is my escapism, but it's my responsibility to make it my escapism. A lot of people are going to talk about, the political implications of this thing. And oftentimes it is men in fandom, but not everybody. When they go, why are you talking about the political implications? I'm like, you could literally just scroll to the next video.
You don't have to be engaging in this. Yeah.
You could just like, if you don't want to hear it, you could just scroll to the next video, the next post, the next whatever. And they're like, why are you trying to put politics in my Star Wars? I'm like, well, it was already there. But even so, you could just watch the next video that talks about 15 different saber forms. Like, you could just go to the next thing.
and that's the thing is like all art is political, right? Like that's the old adage. It's like you simply cannot create something as a human being that isn't engaged with the politics of your lived reality because you can only make art from sort of your perspective. Not saying that you can only write, from your perspective, but you get what I mean. Like you sort of, as a human, you live inside of politics. And so therefore everything that you do is engaged with politics in some way. And so, it really does just come down to curating your own experience and then not scolding other people for the way that they're doing their fandom, unless, of course, it's engaging in those like harmful toward community behaviors like racism in fandom or what have you. The last question I want to ask, I think is sort of related, and I think we probably have the same answer on this. But it is, I think, a question that like people continue to argue about, and I think it's something that can have some degree of nuance to it. But like we've all experienced the thing, and I think you and I can probably think of a very big fandom that at least I used to be a part of that has been destroyed by its creator. And of course, I'm speaking personally of J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. And that happens sometimes, right? Where like the creator of the thing that you love turns out to be a just complete, just garbage person who has garbage beliefs and is using their power and their money to further those garbage beliefs and hurt people in real life. I do think that there is like some nuance within that. Like, for instance, like I love Angel and Buffy and Firefly, and like, like I don't think Joss Whedon should be making things anymore. Like, I don't think he should have a job, but like, I still think that Buffy's like a pretty important piece of like feminist pop culture, like despite who it was created by. And of course, there were so many other people working on that show. Like, I still think it's actually like quite progressive.
Well, I think that is the answer to that, which is, and I've told people many times, which is, it like if you don't know how to engage with something once, Neil Gaiman, for example.
Oh my God,
If you don't know how to engage with something once you find out about learning how a piece of media is made, learning about the industry has actually helped me more with this.
Totally.
Because, for example, I made a TikTok a while back about how Harry Potter and Rurouni Kenshin are very similar in that, not every type of piece of media comes from a single person, but Western published books, and specifically her book in the way that it was licensed in a way that not many other books have been licensed after, and manga. Even though with manga that are adapted into anime, you have production committees, whatever, but learning about how those are made and learning about who earns what money from what can make it very easy. So like you were talking about Buffy, that had a whole writer's room of people. That was a collaborative effort. Not to say that a book or a manga or something isn't collaborative, but the way people earn money on it is very different. And so asking yourself the question of, how do I interact with this? Who does this benefit? And, you know, is the person dead? Have they retired? But it's very much a thing of, you have to learn about how the media is made and what your engagement will do. And I've gotten in fights with people about this kind of thing, even when we were talking about the strikes, right? Of like, what counts as marketing? What counts as free marketing? And fandom engagement does count as free marketing. And we've had this conversation with Harry Potter where it's like, you know, if you want to write fanfic for yourself and you want to watch the DVDs or read the books that you own already or pirate the thing, you know, have at it. We often forget there are ways to engage with fandom that do not involve posting
other people
online. Or other people kind of thing. People were very mad at me when I said during the strikes, whatever. And I was like, you know, you can still like write and read fan fiction. You don't have to post it, right? Like, you know, you can do that. And people were like, she doesn't want us to write fan fiction during a strike. And I'm like, that's not what I said. Not like I was saying, like, don't do anything, whatever. But I was like, let's think about how fandom is marketing. But that's a whole separate thing. But much like we should be conscious consumers about everything, learning about who makes money from what makes that a little bit easier.
I completely agree. And it sort of goes back to what you were saying about like thinking about, you know, engaging in fandom and seeing something in fandom and being like, is this doing harm to anybody? Is this having an effect on real people in the real world? And I think that, following the money when it comes to sort of art created by terrible people, like actually I sort of had like a very clear divide of this recently. I was, for the 10th anniversary of the Bright Sessions, I'm releasing this like compendium of like all of my like show Bible and a bunch of notes and thoughts and stuff, including a bunch of playlist notes that I've written up through the years, sort of why I chose certain songs. And like, you know, I used to listen to Kanye West. There's a couple of songs that I bought on iTunes way back when that like I enjoy listening to, and like that money is gone. Like I paid 99 cents for that song in 2011 because yes, I was still using iTunes up until I think 2018, and now I'm on Apple Music.
Wow. But you're not, but you bought the song and you're not streaming it anymore.
Right. Yeah. And so the public Spotify versions of those playlists, because even though I'm not on Spotify, I know most of my fans are, and so I post everything, that doesn't have that song. Right. And it's like, because like I'm not giving him the money from those streams. Right. But like I already paid my 99 cents for his song. And so like I can listen to it on my own private playlist and like feel whatever way I want to feel about it. Right. And I think that, that really is what it comes down to. And I think also like, you know, listening to to an extent, like I think listening to the people who have been involved with creating the thing that isn't, you know, the terrible like creator, right? Like I think, or the body that controls it, right? Like the strikes being a really interesting example of like the WGA did not ask for a boycott or for people to stop talking about their work or stop promoting their work. SAG did.
And SAG did, after many people online were like, hey, what should or shouldn't do? And SAG didn't know, but it's a whole discourse I cannot get into.
Well, but like it was interesting because like as a SAG guild member who had like worked on, like for instance, like I made a Stranger Things podcast for Netflix, and it's like as a writer, even though I'm not part of WGA, I was still striking in solidarity. I couldn't meet with Netflix about anything, but I could talk about that show online. But because I was a SAG member, I couldn't talk about that show online because I couldn't talk about any work I'd done with Netflix. And so it's like, I think like, you know, and that's just like a good, I think, rule for organizing and activism in general is like listening to the people who are organizing, right? And who are driving the activism effort and all of that. And to sort of, connect that to where people can learn more about what you're doing and Project Fulcrum and listen to you about fandom activism. What's like a good way for people to get involved with kind of like what you are doing around this specifically?
Yes. So the best thing to do would be to join the Get Free Discord, which I'm not one of the active mods for anymore, but they do a wonderful job. And like I was able to hand off the keys to them with that kind of thing. And we can put, a link in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. And you can follow them on social media. They're on Instagram and Blue Sky and TikTok and that kind of thing. And once you go in the Discord, then you can talk about things like Star Wars or other fandoms, and then also get connected to certain smaller like local pods and that kind of thing. And that'll be the best way to and they hold events in there like trainings. If you get connected to a local pod, you can be added to things like a signal chat, whatever, where you have like more on the ground things. Like they just did like a banner drop in New York that was in support of the people organizing DC, that kind of thing. So yeah, the best thing to do is to join the Get Free Discord, which we'll have a link to.
Besides Get Free, is there any other like organization or activist or figure out there that's like just giving you hope for the future?
Yes. My favorite, and that's why I was very happy that they partnered with us. I used to love Fandom Forward, but they've kind of sunset their operations. There's two things. So you should follow World Builders Club on Substack, which has some of the people who are working with Fandom Forward. They talk a little bit more in the book space, but they do a little of that like newsletter sort of connecting fandom ideas with organizing. And then the second thing would be Fight for the Future. I think they do really important work. They're really good at how Gen Z and just anybody really can actually get involved. They've been on the ground floor of talking about all these censorship issues and COSA. They make really good guides and that kind of thing. You should follow them. They're on every platform. One of their organizers, Sarah, is really in the fandom space, is also a TikTok friend of mine. And yeah, I think they give me a lot of hope for what they do. And they're very zeroed into what actually works in a way that I admire.
That's amazing.
Fight for the Future. Yeah, Fight for the Future stuff, Get Free's Discord, and World Builders Club would be some of the big ones. And obviously, if you want to, learn about like politics and Star Wars, Mesa Windu is wonderful. He makes great videos. He's very just like on it. And he's like, I know that like sometimes people who talk about politics a lot can get annoying as hell. But he's not annoying at all. He's very with it, and he does a really good job of what we were talking about earlier of like bridging the gap with people who might be kind of on the fence, of him just kind of being like, what's going on with this thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Oh,
yeah.
So many great recommendations. And yeah, I'll be sure to link to all of that in the show notes. And I'm also going to link to your podcast, which I adore, which is the Mystery Spotcast. Do you want to tell people about exactly what the Mystery Spotcast is?
Yes. So when my friends and I made RuPaul's Pod Race, which was initially our Star Wars podcast, two of us made a joke with each other where we were like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if we rewatched all of Supernatural? That would be insane. Why would we do that to ourselves? And then we did it. So we are rewatching all of Supernatural and recapping it in the hopes that no one will watch it, because it is a show that will make you insane, whether you like it or you don't like it. It's a show that will make you insane. And it's also we hope that we angle the podcast for people who are like, I have heard of the phenomenon of Supernatural, but I never wanted to go watch it. Should I watch it? What's all the hubbub about? And the answer is no. You should listen to our podcast instead, where we'll give you all of the deep lore behind every insane episode and force ourselves to rewatch. Like, I rewatch Supernatural every week for a bit. Okay? It's bonkers. We have good guests on there. We just had Megan Fitzmartin on there.
I have to say, two things. I cannot endorse the don't watch Supernatural message, even though I endorse your podcast, because I do work with and I'm friends with several people who are still like earning residuals off that show.
That's true.
And
what? if you want to just put it on the background so that they get money off of it, absolutely.
But know that you're going to go insane.
Yes.
But I did see the clip on social media the other day of Megan telling you guys in real time that she is the one who told the Supernatural writers room about ABO, and it's been a long time since I was so delighted by two people's reaction to a piece of information.
When I tell you, because like I've known Megan for a long time, and I don't even know she did that. I was like, I genuinely was like, no, this cannot be real. And like we were like, yeah, that's definitely gonna go viral if we post that one.
Yep.
Genuinely, we have had some insane conversations. Also, every week we vacillate. So if it's a good episode, we'll be like, okay, you should watch this one. And then if it's a bad episode, we'll be like, don't watch this one. It's so we vacillate back and forth kind of thing. But it's genuinely a good time. We have a lot of these conversations about fandom. We'll have like a 30-minute conversation about like what happened to the CW, and then we'll go back to talking about like the worst episode of television you've ever seen. It's my dear friend Ollie, who edits the podcast and is my co-host, edits out so much bullshit that I get into. They know they could edit me saying whatever. They don't even need AI. They have enough. They could edit me saying whatever. I don't even know.
To just bury you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
I'll do anything for a bit. So
I love it. Well, thank you for coming on to talk to me and do it for the bit. It was so wonderful to talk about this stuff as always with you.
Yes. And you know, I could yap forever about this stuff. So thank you.
Oh, same. Absolutely same. Hey folks, Lauren Shippen here with another fiction podcast recommendation for you. Today I want to tell you about Windfall, a dystopian sci-fi fantasy epic from the team that brought you Forgive Me. Ever since the tyrannical Wanda's castle appeared in the clouds above Windfall City, its residents have built upwards to meet her. But not everyone is convinced of Her Majesty's grace. The series follows three brothers living on the surface alongside their family, chosen and otherwise, wary of the Queen's motives, and it showcases what they must do to survive in a world that would rather leave them for dead. It's an epic story on a small scale, focusing on the everyday lives of regular people in a fantastic world. There's a huge cast of characters with wildly divergent personalities. It's funny, somber, dramatic, and exhilarating. And perfect for fans of Battlestar Galactica, Game of Thrones, Scavenger's Reign, and Silo. And you can listen to the entirety of the 10-episode season 1 right now, including even a supercut version for folks who'd prefer an uninterrupted marathon. Even better, Season 2 is releasing right now, monthly on every second Wednesday through this November. So go listen to Windfall right now wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, visit windfallpodcast.com.